There we go.
You want the other Stelle?
Actually, yeah.
Thank you.
It's a high class show.
All right, let's take it. Okay. Okay, Erev Tov. So last night, we carrying on with Hilchot Pesach. We spoke about B'dikat Chametz a little bit. We spoke about Bitul Chametz. We spoke last night. Why is it that we need to do B'dikat Chametz and Bitul Chametz is not enough? So let's talk a little bit tonight about the other way around, about Bitul Chametz. Why is it if we're doing B'dikah, why do we still have to do Bitul? What is Bitul? How does it work? It's quite a remarkable thing when you think about it. The Rishonim discuss what is this idea of Bitul Chametz, of nullifying the Chametz. How does it work? What are we doing? So there are essentially two major schools of thought in terms of how it works. One is that we are making the chametz the same as hefker. You're making the chametz ownerless. It's still chametz, it's still there, it's just not mine. And the prohibition in the Torah is against owning chametz. When it says lo yira'eh, bal yira'eh v'bal yimatzeh, it should not be seen, but it says lo yira'eh lecha, should not be seen in your possession. Meaning it doesn't mean, somebody asked me once, they on Pesach, they drive past somewhere, or they go past it was in Chutz La'aretz, they go past a non-Jewish, drive past a non-Jewish bakery, they see all the bread in the window. Is that a prohibition on Pesach? No, it's not a prohibition. If you go in and you start smelling and you start buying, that is a different story. But just to see chametz through the windows, or even not, that's not a problem. But owning the chametz is a problem. So one idea is, and again, it's not so straightforward, because generally speaking, to make something hefker, you need witnesses, needs in front of people, whatever it is. But there is an idea that the bitul, when we make the declaration of bitul chametz, essentially we're saying it's not ours, so it doesn't matter. We're not concerned with it anymore. There's another idea that says it goes even further. It's not just that you're making it hefker, that it's not yours. You're not just renouncing ownership, but you are renouncing all value. This chametz, it was chametz. Now it's not chametz anymore. It is like dust. It's meaningless. It's valueless. If I had chametz in my possession, which was singed to a crisp before Pesach, it was completely burnt, and it's not completely inedible, and there's no prohibition anymore. So in the same way, just by making that declaration, making that speech, that is how it becomes nullified, and it is no longer considered chametz. Right, one of these two. And the truth is, this difference of opinion is reflected in the declaration that we make. If you look in the Haggadah, you look in the Siddurim, you'll see. So the Shulchan Aruch actually says, what do we say? He says, he quotes the language, says, Kol chamira de'ita birshuti, but any chametz which is in my possession. So at night you say, Delo chazitei delo bi'artei, that which I have not seen and that which I have not destroyed. In the morning, when we make the declaration a second time, we include anything that we may have seen and may have destroyed. At night, we don't want to include the chametz that we know about, because we're still going to have it for breakfast. We still want to fulfill the mitzvah of tashbitu, of burning the chametz, etc. But he says, so live till, it should be nullified, veleheve ka'afra da'ara, and it should be like dust of the earth. So the Mishnah Berurah points out over here, he says you should actually say, nachon she'amar veleheve hefker ka'afra da'ara. It should be ownerless like the dust of the earth. So you follow whichever nusach you say, but that reflects the two different ideas. By the way, it's quite remarkable. I saw it once. Normally the Haggadot that you have, Haggadah of Pesach, so at the beginning, before you get to Magid, Kadesh, Rochatz, etc., all the Haggadot start off with, I shouldn't say all, but many of the Haggadot start off with B'dikat Chametz and Biur Chametz and Bitul Chametz. And it's interesting, the theme of speech is a very, very central theme throughout Pesach. The Magid, obviously, the Haggadah, the Leil HaSeder, we speak a lot, right? The name of the Chag, Pesach, the Arizal says, comes from the two words, Pesach, the mouth speaks. It's all about speech. Why is speech so important on Pesach? Because this is the Chag where we celebrate our freedom. This is the Chag we celebrate the fact that we are no longer slaves, but we are free people. One of the main differences between a slave and somebody who's free intrinsically is what he can say. A slave gets told what he can say, what he's allowed to say, what thoughts he's allowed to express. When a person is a ben chorin, one of the ways that finds its expression is in what we can say and what we can speak. So we want to use the power of speech on the Seder night. And even before, the very, very beginning, getting into the process of chametz, matzah, bitul chametz, the Torah says you have power in speech to take an object and to transform it. It's not just it's not meaningless. The words that we say create reality, and that is the idea maybe behind part of the idea behind bitul chametz. So the Shulchan Aruch tells us, as I said, we said after the bdika, achav bdika miyad balayli avatlenu v'yamar kol chamir. I won't read the whole nusach again. The Rama adds in over here. He says yomara bitul b'lashon shemevin. Person has to say this declaration in a language which you understand. It's not a magical incantation. It's not a formula. It's not a tefillah. It's a declaration that's of intent, and it creates a halachic reality. Person has to know what he's saying. He says, "Im amro b'lashon hakodesh kol chamira kolel chametz v'soor." So just a technical point. If you say in lashon hakodesh, but really it's in Aramaic. So you say kol chamira, that includes both chametz and soor, both that which is chametz, which is food which is edible, and soor is that which is sourdough, which can make other things chametz. If you say it in a different language, you have to mention each of those by themselves. So the Mishnah Berurah points out over here. He says, "Miyad balayli vatlenu." We asked the question, why is it if I've gone around and I've searched through the house and I've done bdikat chametz properly and I've burnt all the chametz that's left over, why do I still need to do bitul? What's missing? We said yesterday that just to do the bitul is not good enough, because if you just do bitul and you don't do bdika, Chazal were two reasons, but Chazal were concerned that you might not do it belev shalem. You'll make this declaration, but you don't really want your whiskey to be ownerless. You don't really want the chametz that's in your house to be. You don't really think of it as afra da'ara. So in order to counteract that, we say you have to do the bdika as well. But now, once you're doing bdika, why do you also have to do bitul? This explains the other Mishnah Berurah like this. He says, "Atamu," based on the Gemara. It's true that from the Torah, just to do bdika would have been enough. The mina Torah sagi be'echad mem, or biul or bitul. From the Torah, you can choose one or the other. Meaning, even if you'll say, okay, maybe you did bdika and you didn't find everything, you forgot to check behind the couch, you forgot to check somewhere else, I don't know. Says if you checked, to the best of your ability, there's chametz there you don't know about, so you didn't have in mind, this is without bitul, you didn't have in mind to own that chametz on Pesach, so you're not transgressing. However, what's the problem? He says that's when you've done what was required. Nonetheless, the sages were concerned. The Gemara says you might find a nice piece of bread, a nice piece of cake that you'll find. What's that? A chocolate donut that's hiding behind the couch. Okay, and when you find it, so what's the issue? If you haven't done bitul, so then we say the following: By the way, this is another proof of what I mentioned yesterday. When it comes to perurin, when it comes to crumbs, those are not significant. We're not concerned about owning crumbs of chametz on Pesach. We would be concerned about eating crumbs, but we're not concerned about owning them. But there might be a nice piece of cake that is not nullified by itself. What's going to happen? You're going to find it on Pesach. You're going to look at it. You're going to say, this looks something like that. You're gonna look at it. You're gonna say this looks tasty, and for a moment you're gonna have in mind before you think about the fact that before you forget that it's Pesach and you have to burn it. And at that moment you'll transgress owning chametz. If you've done the bitul before, so then there's no problem, because the bitul includes that which you might happen to stumble upon on Pesach itself, and that's what he says. You've done the bitul, so when you find it on Pesach, it's not yours, it's hefker, and now you can get rid of it and destroy it, and then you will not transgress. So that's why we do both bdika and we do bitul. Just another point in terms of the declaration over here.
So
the
idea of some people going through their gutters and making sure there's no crumbs from previous years, that's not necessary.
No. So that's different. This is what we explained yesterday. Again, there are two different parts to this. One part of bdikat chametz in terms of making sure that I don't own any chametz. So, like as I said yesterday, if you're not going to be in the house over Pesach, or anything that's not going to come into contact with your food, So if there's crumbs, I'm not concerned about it. But anything that's going to come into contact with my food and it's going to come to my Seder plate or come onto my table, there, if there are crumbs there, then I'm going to transgress by eating a crumb of chametz. Now with the Haggadah, it's good practice to make sure, you take out your Haggadot on Pesach, you put them away, before the chametz comes out, and then if you know that they've never had crumbs in them of chametz, you don't have to check them because the halacha is that when it comes to b'dikat chametz, we're only required to search places where it's feasible that chametz might have come in. So if I have a room in the house where I never take food, right? If there are young kids in the house, then there's no such place. But if there is a room in the house where there is no food, that place is completely patur from b'dikat chametz. So some people are careful, certainly with the Haggadot. Some people are careful with all of their svarim, that they will never eat over the books, so that there are never crumbs. And then the books are considered as a place where you never bring chametz in, and then you don't have to check them. But you certainly don't have to. Some people have might call it a chumrah, you might call it other things, but some people say, sell when they do the mecharat chametz, they sell the entire bookshelves and they sell all the books as well. That I don't think is necessary. But in fact, it may cast aspersions on the whole mechira in terms of how serious it is. But if you're going to bring the svarim to the table, so you need to be careful that there aren't going to be any crumbs in them. Okay, so then just in terms of this declaration, as I said, a person has to understand what they're saying, and the Mishnah Berurah actually brings here a translation into Yiddish of how to say the Kol Chamira. So if anybody here doesn't understand English or Hebrew and you prefer Yiddish, you can look at the Mishnah Berurah. Will tell you what to say. But he says exactly this. He says, if you don't know what you're doing, then it doesn't have anything. You're not saying Tehillim or something like that. So you need to teach people who don't understand. You have to teach them what they're saying. And as I say, he brings here the translation. Now he does say at the end of the day, and again, in Hebrew and Aramaic, the person said it and they didn't understand it. But so you don't understand every word, but you know what you're doing. You know it's bitul chametz, and you know that what the principle is behind it. Then he says, then yatzah b'diavad. Yes, b'diavad they've fulfilled they've done bitul. As I said, if you don't understand at all and you think you're just saying a tefillah, so then lo yatsa afilu b'diavad, that is not satisfactory, and you have not nullified your chametz in such a case. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer, Sakadosh Baruch Hu Yizakot Yisrael, Tzarech b'Adam Tom Mitzvot, Shneimah Drach V'Tzman Sidko, Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.